In this video, we're going to be taking a look at Bitcoin. We'll be touching on a fair few articles that we've dug out all around what people's thoughts and opinions are on Bitcoin's price action, and also what people are thinking Bitcoin is likely to do for the rest of this year going into 2022. Guys, as we get into this video, if you do find it useful and informative, go ahead and hit that like button. We both really do appreciate that. And of course, if you happen to be new to the channel and you would like to stay up to date with those new cryptocurrencies, the hidden gems, the technical analysis and news, then do go ahead and subscribe. By subscribing, you'll be kept up to date with absolutely everything we do here. It is free. You'll stay well informed. So why not? And Chris, anything else you want to add before we jump on down and get into everything Bitcoin?
Yeah, I just want to sort of do a bit of a vote, really. Let us know what you'd like a video on in the comments below. Whichever comes out on top, we'll do a video on.
Fantastic. Right, let's jump on down and get right on into it.
Let's do it.
Okay, guys, we're going to start off with one of the most, I guess, prominent pieces of news going around at the moment, China. So China orders major financial institutions to close down crypto-related accounts. Okay, so again, this one just came out yesterday. At least from this guy here. Some of this China stuff is actually old news, kind of regurgitated as new. So let's just see what's going on with this one here. So basically, the People's Bank of China has issued a fresh directive on basically two financial institutions at the start of the week, calling for institutions to block all crypto-related transactions. So during a meeting with the major financial institutions such as Postal Service Bank of China, Industrial Bank, Cultural Bank of China, the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, Alipay, etc., right? They all kind of been told that they have to basically halt these crypto transactions. So institutions must comprehensively investigate and identify virtual currency exchanges and over-the-counter dealers, capital accounts, and cut off transactional funding, basically payments like promptly. And they must analyze the capital transaction characteristics of virtual currency trading hype activities. Interesting stuff kind of going on here, but it's worth just being aware of what is going on in the world when it comes to cryptocurrencies. And this one's not necessarily specifically Bitcoin, but obviously there's lots going on in China around Bitcoin and mining and stuff. So this one kind of cropped up in the research. So it's interesting stuff kind of going on here. I think there's some interesting wording, right? So it's virtual currency trading hype activities, which again could be to do with all of those moon coins, for example, that are basically being rug pulls. We've seen a lot of them during this bull run so far. So I imagine that there's a part of that being fed into the narrative around here as well. Again, some of this stuff is taken out of context. So interesting to see how this kind of evolves over time. Normally you see these kind of articles with crypto bans in India being repeated from previous years, this year. Lots of FUD and lots of manipulation, just trying to control a narrative to get people to sell their Bitcoin early, right? And banks have fallen in line with the instruction, apparently, according to this one. So some of the major financial institutions in China have issued statements to affirm their compliance with the directive. I'm not going to go into more detail, but you can obviously see there's some interesting stuff going on in China at the moment. And we take a look at this one here as well. And this is what I found quite an interesting one, right? So sub 30K Bitcoin. Here's the latest Bitcoin price prediction for, rich dad, poor dad. And again, this is actually quite an interesting one. Doesn't really talk too much about it, but again, what's really unclear from actually reading the article without watching the video is actually there's a lack of kind of evidence to back up the statement. Instead, there's speculation. So just going to quickly just go over this one. So basically, so here's stocks. The government will make sure it doesn't crash. Gold will not crash, but crypto, you know why? Because the Fed doesn't want it. And because the reason I like crypto, the reason I buy Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all that stuff is I don't like the Fed. When I talk to most of the young guys, they don't like the Fed either. But the problem is, and this is why you've got to be smarter, is that the Fed wants to take crypto out. The European Central Bank wants to take it out. The Bank of Japan wants to take it out. The Bank of China wants to take it out. And again, some of that is quite obvious, right? Obviously, the banking world doesn't want cryptocurrency. They want to be in control of it. But obviously, we are seeing CBDCs, right? So ultimately, we'll get into that in a moment. But ultimately, all these banks are trying to get their own digital currencies out there so that they still stay on top. And again, these stable coins is ultimately what they'll be. But ultimately, this is the evolution of cryptocurrency. So you've got to take some with the other. It's not like you're going to see banks completely disappear. That's just not going to happen. They're going to evolve with the technology that is around them, albeit they are slowly adopting it. And ultimately, if they can take out some of those key players on route, it makes any sense for them to do so. Now, obviously, we understand this, and obviously, it's important that we do understand what the banks and what roles they are playing in the cryptocurrency space. So he's not wrong here either, but his next kind of steps in logic then kind of become a little bit, okay, I need some more evidence to back it up. So he mentions that there's a risk of central bank digital currencies, which he thinks China will roll out before the United States. Yeah, because China obviously are much further along that process than many of the other countries. But, they're not the first to roll out a CBDC. There's other countries around the world who have already done this. But ultimately what you're starting to see here is, okay, so we have the Bank of China wanting to basically clamp down on cryptocurrency transactions, right? We've just spoken about that. And yet they're launching their own CBDC. You obviously put these two things together, you can understand exactly what they're trying to do here is they're trying to stay on top. Ultimately, if Bitcoin were to be a legal tender, ultimately they're going to run the risk of their CBDC not being potentially as effective as they want it to be. They want to stay in power. All banks tend to want to do this. So they're going to evolve. They're going to have their own CBDCs. This much we are pretty clear on. And obviously this guy, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, still gets that. He understands it, right? But then, biggest bubble in the world in history and getting bigger. Biggest crash in the world in world history coming. He's calling Bitcoin to drop down to 24K, right? Or even around 20K. Now, again, some of this stuff is, sure, it's possible, but we're in that kind of buy zone right now with Bitcoin at around 31K. And the likes of Tesla, MicroStrategies, they're accumulating at this point. Okay, they just keep accumulating Bitcoin, and that prevents it from falling down too much lower. Now, ultimately, what you're seeing here is pieces like this. I wish there was more evidence to say, okay, how do you get down to 20K? How do you get down to 24K? Show me the evidence of that, because then you would be able to actually have a decent argument to say, okay, yes, that's possible, or no, it's not possible. Instead, you just have speculation calling out numbers that other people have spoken about in the past, and it's just being regurgitated. So he's not wrong. That obviously banks are a problem. They obviously don't want cryptocurrency. We can see this time and time again. With this being said, there are lots of banks around the world who are already on a journey. We've seen lots of roadmaps about how they kind of get to a CBDC or start utilizing different technology for settlements around the world. So it's not that they don't want cryptocurrency. What they don't want is you to have a significant amount of power outside of their control. That's ultimately what that's about. So it's an interesting piece. Again, I'd like to see more evidence around how to get down to 20K from this point of view. But nonetheless, it's important that we do acknowledge what's being spoken out there, right? Let me jump over to this one, right? This is actually from Facebook's David Marcus explains why China's crackdown on mining is actually a great opportunity and development for Bitcoin. So in summary here, it's actually quite a short piece, but we'll just kind of go through some of the key takeaways, right? So despite the ongoing Bitcoin crackdown in China causing potentially a major price crash, which I don't necessarily agree with. I think there's obviously compounding. It's many different things are compounding the fear that's resulting in people selling. But ultimately what you end up with is there's narratives, right? So Bitcoin and the crackdown in China potentially causing the price to crash. The head of Facebook Financial has noted that this is a great development for the digital asset because basically what you're going to be starting to see is potentially more miners going over to the United States, leaving China. So for quite some time, we've seen a heavy concentration of Bitcoin mining in China, and lots of people have then speculated around how this basically makes it not decentralized, and China wanted to, they could seize control over Bitcoin and all of that kind of stuff. So actually this crackdown actually helps Bitcoin ultimately in the future development of it, by allowing it to be more decentralized around the world rather than heavily concentrated in one area. With this being said, however, some of those miners that are in China or migrating out are going over to some of the nearby countries where, again, they're more favorable regulations or towards mining specifically. Energy is not overly expensive still. And you're able to still make some significant profits mining Bitcoin. So actually what you're end up finding here is there's going to still be there's going to be some heavy concentrations of Bitcoin miners in the nearby surrounding areas of China. So again, you're not going to completely dissipate it, but this obviously is indicating that there is a significant portion of mining activity increasing elsewhere in the world, leaving China. So again, this helps the decentralization effort of Bitcoin and the future development of Bitcoin overall. So going further forward, this is actually quite a positive piece, considering we're in a bit of a downward trend at the moment, and lots of different pieces of news kind of being circulated with bans in all sorts of different countries, crackdowns on mining and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately what you start seeing here is actually a better future for Bitcoin, which is an interesting piece there. If we go up over to this one, this is a Russian billionaire calls upon the central bank to follow El Salvador and embrace crypto. So again, polar opposite, right? We've gone from extreme fear now over to a Russian billionaire calling for the Central Bank of Russia to basically go ahead and follow El Salvador, embracing cryptocurrencies. Now, this billionaire was one of the world's richest men in 2008 until the financial crash, and he actually is currently worth, I think, about $4.8 billion according to Forbes. So not a small player in the space at all. He's well known for many different reasons, some good, some bad. Obviously, when you're a billionaire, you get into all sorts of trouble. But ultimately, what you can see here is he's a well-known guy who is calling out for basically a Russian central bank to follow El Salvador and embrace cryptocurrencies before it's too late and before Russia gets left behind. So again, this would be an interesting thing to see if this follows suit and whether or not this is going to be kept up with moving further forward in the space. So again, we've gone from some countries like China basically having a complete crackdowns, institutions banning cryptocurrency transactions, through to Russia, where they're calling out for an El Salvador move, right? A small country who is embracing Bitcoin as legal tender. And ultimately what you're looking for here, or what this particular billionaire is looking for, is for the Central Bank of Russia to also follow suit. So an interesting piece that's cropped up as well. And if we continue this, we can obviously see that there is some interesting things on the horizon too. So Bitcoin has formed that dreaded death cross, that next narrative that everyone should be afraid of. Even though it only really shows you what has happened previously, people still get scared of it. Ultimately, what does this mean? Well, there hits 2-week low. We can see this, and obviously there is still hope further down the line. So in this particular article, Bitcoin has formed that dreaded death cross, which analysts say usually predicts doom, right? But it doesn't. Ultimately, if we take a look and we can see what happened in March, etc., and we can look back a fair few death crosses, you can actually see some interesting stuff occurring. And again, you cannot take a death cross in isolation to everything else. We obviously have had quite a few different things forming on the Bitcoin chart. We can see we've had the Wyckoff distribution, we've had head and shoulder patterns, we've had death crosses. All of these different things are designed to kind of create fear in the space. Ultimately, what does come after a death cross, be it some time after, is going to be a golden cross, and you're going to see the narrative completely shift and change. And again, we saw something similar with the March crash, right? We saw the price of Bitcoin fall significantly in March. We saw a death cross after the crash of March, okay? And then what did we see? We saw the price surge significantly after that, and we got a golden cross that represented that. So again, there is still hope here. A death cross is only really a past indicator. It doesn't show you any more than that. In this particular article, it talks a little bit around the $31,000 support level. Ultimately how we've shedded 10K. It goes through a little bit on that kind of stuff. It talks about the crackdown on Bitcoin mining in China and all of that kind of stuff. It doesn't actually go into too much around the death cross other than this little piece here, where the 50 simple moving averages fell below the 200-day moving average. We can obviously see that, but all it does is represents the recent move down here. And ultimately, over the next little while, we're going to see interesting things happen. If we take a look at what happened in March, Bitcoin rose over 1,000% since the death cross actually occurred in March. So interesting stuff does lie ahead when it comes to Bitcoin. And again, we can move on again. So here's how Bitcoin can survive the death cross, as they say. And this is according to crypto analyst Benjamin Cohen. It's a fantastic guy, does some fantastic technical analysis. And here again, he still feels that we are in a bull market, but it is going to take time to recover out of this, and it's kind of a bit of a no-brainer. So here's a quote, right? Do you have to be told that things are bearish recently? No, you don't. Things definitely do appear to be very bearish, or at least on the short time frames. When you actually zoom out, things are not looking bearish, and when you definitely take into consideration lots of other things in the space, such as potential fifth wave with Elliott wave theory, or we move into Bitcoin dominance, we can see what's going on there. We look at the stock to flow, we can see what's going on there. Ultimately, from a macro point of view, things are definitely not looking bearish. But when you do zoom in on maybe a daily chart or an hourly chart, and you take a bit of a view on that, then yes, definitely things do look bearish, and it's quite obvious that they are. But he does continue here that the analyst asserts that he still believes Bitcoin is going to $100,000, but that more time is required to hit that price target, and that is reasonable assumption at this point in time. You could assume that the Bitcoin and ultimately the bull run has been extended a little bit because of the manipulation that we've now had to endure in the space, and this is courtesy of those institutions. Elon Musk has definitely not helped it. He's definitely helped his friends push the price in the right directions as needed. Coincidences are incredibly rare, and there's been far too many of them when it comes to Bitcoin. Again, Benjamin does go on to explain a few things here. He talks about how we've had the death cross, but actually there's a potential golden cross on the horizon. This is going to be that next narrative that gets a lot more retail investors back in the space to push the price significantly higher. And again, this I would imagine would be towards the end of the bull run that golden cross will come in. And again, we'll start seeing that parabolic move in the finishing move of Bitcoin during the bull run. Now, Benjamin believes that this could take up to 6 months to actually see that golden cross occur. So it's an interesting thing to kind of watch out for. I think we're going to be quite volatile for a little while longer yet as we continue to trade sideways in an accumulation phase. I'm still on the fence as to whether or not we're going to start seeing 24K or 20K Bitcoin. I really cannot see that really happening, but unfortunately at the moment the technicals are looking weaker and weaker on the shorter time frame. So again, we'll have to see what happens. Anything is possible in the crypto space. And on that note, we obviously have one additional piece, and this is what Plan B is talking about. So Plan B unveils Bitcoin's worst case scenario for 2021. He's predicting $135,000 by December, and that is a pretty significant price bump from where it is today. So in terms of what is going on here, we have Plan B highlighting Bitcoin's worst case scenario for 2021, following the recent plunge to be basically $135,000 by December. The crypto analyst sets his highest Bitcoin price prediction target around $450,000. So let's take a look and see what Plan B is talking about here. So for those who do not know, he's the creator of the stock to flow model, and basically he's unveiled his kind of next prediction. Okay, so Plan B highlights the least price target on Bitcoin, which basically in a recent tweet, Plan B claimed that the lowest price Bitcoin will trade in August is going to be about $47,000. The analyst said that crypto would trade at a minimum price of $43,000 in September, $63,000 in October. In addition, Plan B added that his least price target for Bitcoin for November is $98,000, with December being $135,000. And here's the tweet you can see here from Plan B. Basically, he's saying that Bitcoin is below 34K, triggered by Elon Musk's energy FUD and China's mining crackdown. There is also more fundamental reasons that we can see weakness in June and possibly July. My worst case scenario is for 2021, price on-chain based, August 47K, September 43K, October 63, November 98, and December 135K. Again, he's then got his stock to flow model worst case scenario 2021 plotted out here as well, so we can kind of see the expectations. We can also see where we are right now in terms of the correction, and again, this correction is what you've seen time and time again for all of these areas in the past. So again, everything here is looking reasonable for me. It looks like we're going to be spiking above that line. 135k is definitely a lower end. We can obviously see within our technical data 178k. So interesting times do definitely lie ahead here. In a separate tweet, Plan B mentioned the price differences between August and September, according to his worst case scenario, will reduce by 4k in September from 47k. He said this would be a small dip in September fundamentals. Plan B's tweet generated several reactions from members in the crypto community, pushing the analyst to state his best case scenario. He placed a $450,000 price target on Bitcoin in December. So again, there's some interesting stuff going on here. You see a lot of really good analysts in the space, from people like Benjamin Cohen, Plan B. They're calling out that we are going to see significant price increases up towards that 100k level pretty significantly in 2021 or early 2022. And again, what you're seeing is then people who, without any kind of explanation, are calling for Bitcoin to go down. And so I can see fundamentals and some speculation around this, but ultimately I see technicals when it comes to this kind of stuff here. And this is where my opinion then starts to form. I'm a technical kind of guy, and therefore I'm more in line with thinking that the technical data isn't going to lie to me. Ultimately, there are some things that go on in the space that will be manipulating the fundamentals and helping to create fear and FUD in the space. But ultimately, I don't like to speculate on that too much, and I like to rely on the data. And at the moment, the data is indicating to us that we are going into a bull run, and we are going to start seeing some significant price increases in the second half of this year. So again, we're going to have to see how this unfolds. But for now, everything is looking pretty reasonable for Bitcoin. We can see on the short time frame right now, we're bouncing right off of the $31,000. This is the hourly chart. So again, everything here as point of recording this video is looking pretty good. We obviously came down to here twice recently. There is, of course, only so many times we can test this area before it will fail. And we are at a bit of an interesting relative strength index position as well. We can see that Bitcoin dominance is starting to rise back up towards our target of 50%. So again, everything here is following our expectations nicely. And guys, hopefully you have found this video useful and informative. Chris, is there anything else that you want to add from a Bitcoin point of view, or maybe something external that I just haven't covered?
No, the only thing that I would add, because obviously, like I see all the comments, and obviously, you know, people are hurting at the minute, right? People are fearful. But some of the FUD that's written in some of the comments, and I don't like to focus on the negative, but you know, it's just amazing. You've got some really great you know, individuals that when I say they're great at technical analysis, right? And we're all kind of singing off the same hymn sheet. We're all kind of saying, yeah, it's bearish at the moment. However, it's not the end of the bull run. We're not in a bear market as such. Yeah, it might be a temporary, like, you know, bearish sort of movement, but I don't think it's a bear market, right? And you know, I just find it interesting how many people seem to be, you know, experts all of a sudden on technical analysis. But you know, the narrative, you know, from some of the better or best technical analysis people sort of on YouTube, and you see it on Twitter, and you see heads of some of the projects saying the same stuff. You know, it's difficult, but you're being made to feel this way with the manipulation in the market, and it's just part and parcel of a young market, a young small market, and it won't be like this forever. But one thing that I would say is try to enjoy the ups and downs of the market, knowing where it's going, because ultimately where it's going hasn't changed. If you believe in these projects, they're gonna, you know, and they've got all of the things that we talk about, the tech, the team, the use case. You know, if none of that's changed, then, you know, why are you not believing now is my question. For me, it's like the real early days of the stock market, right? Like lots of people got burnt. People, you know, lost lots of money in the early days because it was volatile, because they didn't understand it. You know, my ask would be go look at some of the history of like the stock market. Look at the boom of the internet age. and see what happened there, and try to get more of an understanding of, why the market is behaving in the way it is.
Absolutely. Guys, if you found this video useful, informative, maybe entertaining at times, do go ahead and hit that like button. We both really do appreciate it. And of course, if you happen to be new to the channel and you'd like to stay up to date with all the technical analysis, those new cryptocurrencies, the hidden gems, and the news, then do go ahead and subscribe. By subscribing, you will be kept up to date with absolutely everything we do here. It is free, you'll stay well informed, so why not? With that said, done and out of the way, guys, we hope you have a fantastic day, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Yeah, take care.